So welcome to this panel, and thank you for being here for a long time. And today I'm deeply proud that after 20 years I was deeming that capacity building is a significant portfolio that we work. Otherwise, it's like 5% of the organization's that is strategies and all. So I was very happy and very clueless now. Whatever mind I had a question of panelist, now it's everything busted by CBC actually. So I have to turn around what is happening here. It's very great that the panel one focuses on this national policies. With me, there are three guests here, all are bureaucracy and worked and still in services and working here. Mr. Antonida Desai, IAS, who is actually a former chief secretary, worked in Madhya Pradesh and also long stint and chairman of RERA in Madhya Pradesh. And in the online, my colleagues and also you know that IHS is a key resource center for Jal Jeevan Mission, technical officials throughout the rural sector, and we covered more than 30 districts like that. And from Jal Jeevan Mission, Dr. Pradeep, who have joined us, IFS, Indian Forest Service officer, and he's presently director of Jal Jeevan Mission. We welcome you to this panel, sir. And then third level is like, I have met him like 2 months before in Kerala, and he was very youngsters, bureaucrats who talked about on the city level planning on capacities. So Dr. Arun K. Vijayan, who is actually CEO of Smart City of Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala. So all are three. So this panel is a national panel which is going to talk on the capacities. As Mr. Subramaniam has mentioned, that domain, functional, and behavioral competency is what they are looking in the policy. So we can cross-cut across these three people who are working in domainly differently, as well as state is different, as well as the training portfolio also, they attend the schemes in different way. So we try to do it, and I want from the convener what is the time to finish it, because there is a break in between. So can I make it up to 40 minutes, 40 to 45? Yeah, so we try to conclude it. So a brief on this. Number one, like a lot of people might have got the flyers. This panel focuses on perspectives from national level organization, ministry, exclusively on the policies. In this 3 years, we can see massive, all ministries floating capacity building program, empanelment, and IHS is like 4-5 ministries we already got empaneled. So we want to understand what are the large scale of policies in terms of contexting in the national level, in terms of state level, in terms of city. It's very true that until the policy dry down to the city, it is not going to fare enough. So we have all these three panelists who have been having this experiences. So I think you can enjoy this panel. And as a moderator, I will give a clue that we are having a 4 level of round. 1 level is asking about their experience in the capacity, and second is on their state experiences, third is on their domain experiences, fourth is question from the audience. So concurrently understand it, what we are trying to tell it. Now to the questions to Anthony sir, present here, because always offline speakers are very targeted one for us. So I want to understand from you, because you have worked in both UN level as well as you have been in the state capacities and to the chief secretary level. So what is your understanding on the policies, reflections, that current policy we have in the capacity building? What is the present and the future look upon this? 2 to 3 minutes, you can take your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shubha. 2 to 3 minutes to respond to this wide set of questions is not very easy. But what I will do is, I will set aside all my carefully crafted, nuanced introductory remarks. Okay, I will set aside all these carefully crafted and nuanced remarks and dive right into the issue. I will tell you 2 things. What I think is lacking in our policy implementation of capacity building at the moment, in the implementation of it, and then just a remark or 2 about the UN, since you asked for it. Now, see, at the theoretical level, we are all aware. There's nothing short in our theoretical understanding of capacity building. We all know all the various things that go into capacity building. There's training and skill development. There are the change of technological and managerial systems, there is the provision of physical infrastructure and of resources. But in the implementation of capacity building, at least in government, my observation is that all said and done, the focus is only on training and skill development. That happens. That is very important. Please don't misunderstand me. I know that is important at all levels in government, right from the, the IAS officers, the all India service officers, right down to the cutting edge everywhere. But the difficulty is that if we are only going to focus on training and skill development, officers get trained, they go back, and of course all this is far more complicated in the urban governance space because you also have public representatives. So there's training and skill development of public representatives as well as officials. But when they go back, if there is no simultaneous change in the way the organization functions, I won't say all their training and skill development goes to waste, but 80% of it goes to waste. And they soon lapse into a state of skill illiteracy, at least of the additional skills that were acquired, you see. So this, theoretically, all of us know there needs to be technological and managerial system changes in systems of work in the organization, in the structures of the organization, but for some reason for a variety of reasons, we find ourselves unable to do that. And so this creates one of the biggest bottlenecks, I think, in real capacity building. And the two cannot happen in isolation. It's not that you can do training at one time and then say we'll come in with managerial and system improvements in the organization at another time, because then both don't function well. They have to happen somewhat simultaneously. And I'll come to what I think can be a solution to this. I would like to speak before I finish my 3 minutes, if I've not already finished it, about the second shortcoming. The second shortcoming is the lack, I feel, of continuous feedback after the training. Training happens in a variety of organizations, 30, 40 training institutes of different kinds. IIHS is one of them, and then there are less eminent ones. But there are a large number of training institutes of the government and other ones empaneled with the government. Training happens, people go back, and that's the end of it. You see, the institution thinks, and it does because it's been only engaged for that its job is done. It's trained, people have gone back. But there is no feedback. There is no mentoring. Any capacity building program needs to have that feedback if there is to be sustainability, and if that training, even if we are talking only about training, needs to be transformational to the organization. In fact, that feedback will give indications of how even systems and organizational changes can be brought about. Because then, if there is a feedback, then you know why a certain amount of training that has been given is not becoming effective at the ground level. And then you try to suggest changes of the organization. So really, just to conclude this, there needs to be a kind of a three-point matrix continuing between the supplier of that skill development and training, between the government or the organization or the department in the state or whatever that has asked for it, and between the person who has been trained. There needs to be this three-point matrix between them that has an ongoing interaction, and this, I think, will strengthen capacity building. Do I have a moment to speak about the UN, or you'll take that later? Okay, great.
Thank you that you are focused directly to the pedagogy of what we are doing on the feedback system, which is significant. But unfortunately, what is happening, the time constraint from the government side, time constraint from the practitioners, it's like we try to do it for doing it. Need analysis or impact assessments and everything. I think the policy should focus, that should be a continuous system, which you are trying to mention it. We'll ask the question who have been working now. And second, I'll target Mr. Pradeep Singh joining for us. Very great to see you, sir, after a long time. And it's a very clear-cut and Jal Jeevan mission that building partnership and changing life is the objective of the KRC, Key Resource Center, and IH is also doing that. But I know that you are in position from 2019 to till date. Almost ministry is now taking care of 180 institutes of training institutes in level of officers and level of bureaucracy, in the level of even community-centric. So what is your thoughts as the individuality or institutionally or the enabling environment is already started or given a space exclusively in this Jal Jeevan mission, or any turnouts you have seen, or any reflections or any outcomes you have seen here?
So thank you so much for inviting me, and it was a real honor to hear all the eminent panelists before me. We were very fortunate in Jal Jeevan mission that we had very precise target, and the structure therefore that we designed for this, because under Jal Jeevan mission we are targeting all the households to have tap water supply. So to have a tap water supply, we should have a system which is focused on service delivery. Normally, our rural water supply departments were mainly infrastructure creation department, creating hand pumps, tube wells, stand posts, things like that. But now we are into the service delivery mode, and like Madam Subhash said, that we have structured the training at all three levels, at PRI level, at district level, and also at the state level, so that the change that is to come to deliver this water service to all the rural households is possible. And so from my experience, since we started journey from 17% tap water connections to about 63% yesterday, I think one is the very huge speed with which very huge speed and scale we are working. And that in doing the infrastructure part itself requires a lot of knowledge, but we have benefit of private sector in terms of contractors. They are part of it, and we have tried to reach out to the contractors and solve their problems as well, so that the infrastructure that we create is ready for the objective of meeting the service delivery norms. And enabling atmosphere, for example, measurement and monitoring of service. How do we do that? Should we involve community? Should we use technology? What are the different pathways? So we have tried to travel on all those paths and focused on each, and tried to build certain pilots first of all, so that we have understanding how it will be implemented, and then try to impart those learnings to state governments and district level authorities. Specifically, I will give you an example that I deal with is implementation of IoT system for measurement and monitoring of service delivery. So when we have a water supply system in the village, we have a reservoir, water source, and a distribution network available. We all know it's not a rocket science that with using some sensors we can measure these supplies very easily at a much cheaper cost. But the only challenge was how to scale it and how to have a system where at a district level or at a state level, I have a simple report that out of, let's say, 18,000 villages, 16,000 villages have no issues. These 2,000 villages have some issues, and there is some people who are taking remedial actions, and then how to monitor the whether the problem is solved within a day, within a week, within a month, or things like that. So that system we tried to build. So we had a pilot setup. We did a pilot in different parts of the country, almost 100 locations. And based on the learnings, we had a expert committee which went down in details, so that the contracts and specifications, those things can be made available, which states can immediately take up and use it for onboarding such players. And we are very happy that in this journey, we not only had this concept, but now we have a portal. This is the category available on GEM. people are doing tenders, and some states have gone ahead. Gujarat I think they are going in all 10,000 villages. This flow measurement and monitoring system. So that is one part. But apart from that, there are various other aspects: the equity aspect, the financial sustainability aspect, even the source sustainability part. So all those things also, and we, like ma'am said, that we are trying to build partnerships. We involve professor chairs, KRCs are of course there. We also reached out to eminent institutes, and now we are very soon we are trying to develop a digital academy where the knowledge that is being created by all our partners will be available on this platform. Where user can themselves review what was taught. Maybe at that point of time when he was assigned for training, it is not very relevant, but later in his work he find that something was there, and then he can search and take a feedback, connect to partners. So that kind of system we are trying to develop. So with that, I think I would stop and I will wait for question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you. As Arvo mentioned in his inaugural speech, that integration is now slowly coming up from all the levels of understanding, like building partnership. Then only we can success to improve the capacities or improving the system. I think you also second on that, and the Digital Academy is a very good prosperous that it is going to go to massive audiences when we create the Digital Academy, which COVID has taught us a lesson on this. And we have a panelist, who is 2006 IAS officers, and my colleague, Mr. Arun K. Vijayan. He is actually handling a big portfolio, both Amrut and smart cities. And he worked at the ministry level, state level, and city level down the lane. So he knows three gamuts. The significant question to ask him to that, how do our national policies on CB support your state planning and implementation efforts? How it does? And yesterday we have had a discussion. There is a second question for you that now Amrut 2.0 and smart cities have changed their gamuts, not only training the officials, we should also train equally the stakeholders like contractors, who are helping us and implementing other than communities also. So what is your reflection, how this has enabled the capacities to the state which you are working for almost 10 years, Kerala?
Thank you, Subha. Good morning, everybody. First of all, it's a great honor to be part of this distinguished panel. I think I'm the youngest person who will be attending the whole conference here. So more than anything, I look forward to learning from the veterans who have been practicing urban governance over the years. So coming to the question, first of all, Amrit and Smart City, both these missions have a lot of complementarities with what, say, Jal Jeevan mission is doing and what previous missions like Jendrum has been doing in city governance. But specifically, what I have understood is that both this mission has a very specific mandate of building capacities both at the human resource level as well as the institutional level of the city governance aspect. So, if you look at Amrit, I think Pradeep sir would agree, it has a similar mandate as in Jal Jeevan mission of enabling the stakeholders as in not just the local level representatives who have to take decisions on where to put these lines in and when to put these lines in. Also the players like the contractors who come in and deliver these systems for us. So be it IoT systems like monitoring of the quality or quantity of the water or 24/7 mechanisms for delivering water. All these new technologies which need to come in, we need to educate all sort of stakeholders because we have been doing these matters over the last 67 years, but we are finding better ways with the use of technology to get it done. So Smart City again, I think it is a unique mission in the history of India that we have given such a big mandate or wide mandate to 100 cities to upgrade their infrastructure, upgrade their capacities in different sectors. There is no fixed straitjacket formula for cities to adopt as far as smart cities go. But really, at the core of smart city, we have to have a technology backbone which enables the stakeholders to plug into. So, be it green mobility, smart monitoring of services which are being delivered, smart disaster management facilities, utility services like electricity, water. All this come together into an integrated command control center where all stakeholders have something to pitch in, be it at the political executive level of the mayor or the corporation commissioner or the citizens themselves who can contribute using their feedback mechanisms. So these mandates have been set from the national level, and that has certainly helped 100 cities, maybe the bigger cities like Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, Kolkata had this before the Smart Cities mission started, but Tier 2 cities, Tier 3 cities which have been included in Smart City, it is the first time they're developing these capacities, not just infrastructure-wise, but also the people who are involved in maintaining and operating the software or hardware of these cities. The second question which you asked was about directly linked to the stakeholders. So I think this has become, in last 10 years or so, it has become very clear that just training the officials doesn't give the output of the game, like Sir had mentioned in his opening remarks. Just that we train people, do skill development, and we go back, that doesn't work out when it comes to urban governance. We need to have a constant feedback mechanism where we get inputs from different stakeholders to know what the demand is. So in the keynote also, it was mentioned that we need to have a mechanism where the demand-based training has to be there. So that is exactly what I believe all the missions which have been mandated by the government of India has been trying to do at state level and city level. So definitely involving stakeholders like contractors, councillors, citizens, and educating them and building their knowledge and capacities regarding these new things which are getting done in city level governance is definitely one thing which we are doing in both the missions right now. I'll stop at that then. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That it's very clear cut that, you told that the integrated command center, which really all the urban sector in a single space, so it has been, the decision makers can take quick decisions, what is the process and planning, but as you also mentioned to the extension, these integrated systems can be used for the capacities improvement. So the interdepartmental coordination is very lacking as as everybody knows it, even in morning keynote, they so a joint secretary doesn't know what is happening in the next room is happening in there. So I felt that integration is happening, and we at IHS trying to do that also. To take the people there and understand as an evidence-based cases, as Aro mentioned in his keynote address, that's where we are also learning for that. We'll come back to you. Now, Mr. Sir, I want to ask you, because you have held a massive position in the Madhya Pradesh State and Chief Secretary. You might have cross-cut the domain. It's not only housing, you might have seen in water, sanitation, mobility, and everything. So I want to understand that you have seen any change of cadre levels that affect the change in the local ecosystems. You told about looping feedbacks and everything, that is one part, but training all the officials, training all the stakeholders in any one of our schemes has turned around the impact towards that scheme or towards that implementation?
Yes. In Madhya Pradesh, Shubha, we do have a pretty good institute, the Nagariya Prashasan Prashikshan Sansthan, the Urban Administration Training Institute. And it functions pretty well, and I must say, particularly within its context compared to similar institutes in other states, it's doing a good job. But to be quite honest, to be quite frank, it does suffer from those inadequacies that I mentioned in my earlier remarks. The inadequacy that it focuses unduly on training and skill development without looking into organizational systems. And the second inadequacy, that after a set of people are trained, there is no interaction there is no feedback between the institute and the people being trained. And so the sustainability, the understanding of what the shortcomings were in the training, and the understanding of how systems are to be changed is not there. To add to it, there is a third inadequacy. And I suppose this is inherent with a government training institute, where it is an institute training government officials by government officials. They rely on their in-house capacities, which is good to a certain extent, but then they are all working in an enclosed system among themselves. There is no communication with academia or with the private sector, and to that extent, then even the training, even just the limited training and skill development that is being offered, it does suffer to that extent. And that is something too that needs to be changed. Government has an institution, it is good, government is proud of its institutions, but government-owned training institutions need to learn from non-government ones in order to establish these cross-cutting relationships, engagements, if even the quality of training is to improve. This is a shortcoming too that I noticed in Madhya Pradesh. There are attempts to overcome that, but government takes long to change. So those are my remarks about what happens in Madhya Pradesh. About the UN, do you want me to talk about? Very briefly, I think that capacity building, the UN undertakes a lot of capacity building programs. Now, the effectiveness of these programs in a country like India are practically nil. Because, India is such a large country and already so developed, already has so much capacity, and a UN program of capacity building really amounts to only some kind of funding. Ultimately, the trainers are from India, it goes back there, and it also suffers from the same problems that we were talking about, that it focuses only on training, not on because even if they come up with suggestions, it's very difficult for the UN to change things. However, in smaller countries and in more underdeveloped, less developed countries like Timor-Leste or Rwanda or Niger, there UN capacity building programs are more effective. Because for one thing is that otherwise the country itself doesn't have that capacity, and the country is more open to suggestions in terms of structural and managerial change. And as Dr. Ravi mentioned in his remarks earlier, there are countries like in Africa and all where, South Africa, where the local institutions are even stronger than the federal government. So they have the power to, and ultimately when you're doing a capacity level development program, you are working at that level. And these institutions have the powers even to bring in change. So I find that UN capacity building is more effective in those situations, but not really in a country like India.
Thank you. It's like, we are hearing the same story from our trainers also, what you're mentioning. Sometimes the localized is more powerful than the states, and the guidelines are strict. Even whatever we are training in different level of, with different missions or different state scheme, the practitioners try to tell the reality on that. I can connect to that. So now for Mr. Pradeep in the online, because it's domain, because water sector is one of a sector which I'm working, so it gets sometimes coming up here. One of a big Jal Jeevan mission target is that the engineers has to transformed into the social development engineers, and participatory approach is a key larger benefits in the system of implementation. What is your reflection, and what this 4 years outcomes have come, because you are really evaluating the systems?
Yeah. So, so we are seeing that when we are implementing Jal Jeevan Mission, we have made certain changes in the process, the way PhD department performance itself was looked at. And I see there is a lot of change, and there is a lot of opening of minds that is happening at field level. One of the key things that we did is empowering women first of all and giving them training for testing the water samples at their village. And all the testing data that they are doing at field level used to come to a common portal, and wherever there is contamination, all this data will get reported at district level, and now engineer has to take remedial action. Earlier, our approach was that once in a year we used to review that how many testing you have done and things like that. Now it's almost a real-time thing, and unless until remedial action is taken, that report of how many contaminations has been found is available at segregate level. We at a national level talk to state government that the sufficient remedial actions are not being taken, and similarly the same thing can happen at state and districts and block level. So at least that has started happening. People are getting into the mode of service delivery, that you have to meet certain benchmark. It's not only the infrastructure that we have created. Of course, the quality of remedial action and things like that will continue to improve, and we have to continue to focus on that. But this is one aspect that through technology, through partnerships, we have made this disruption within the system. And now, because of this, and also we have asked the states to have a robust grievance redressal systems and things like that, where people are raising their issues and it is monitored, tracked, and then that also some kind of performance. It is also leading to some kind of performance at district levels. Another thing that kind of disruption that we tried to bring about was, apart from this grievance redressal and involvement of communities in planning, is when we complete the work at village level, we try to, the Public Health Engineering Department gives a certificate to Gram Panchayat. Now, it's Gram Panchayat has to accept that actually the work has been done and all the households are provided. And that resolution has to be passed, some kind of video is recorded, and that we say that put it on public domain. So we have a very nice dashboard where you can drill down to a village, and if it is a Har Ghar Jal village, then you will see what certificate the PhD department has given, on what date, then what resolution the Gram Sabha has passed, and whether, and it should be visual also. It's not just an academic exercise where two people can create those kind of documents. So at least some kind of social audit, some kind of transparency we have tried to inbuild so that this opening of mind is almost forced. And people see that now you have large number of customers. It's not only 70 villages under your domain they are there, but it is the people who are living in those 70 villages, let's say 7,000 families, they are your customers and you have to serve them. So that is kind of thing that we are trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you. And Aro is here. So I want to mention this local ecosystem on enabling environment on the community. Last week we went to Karnataka, one district, and we have taken 50 people survey to handle the water quality test kit, which we video recorded. More than a laboratory assistants, they have done excellently well, and they taught us this is wrong, this is right on the procedure. So it's documented also. It will come for our conference paper. So it's really in the happening. Probably a commissioner have given a best district what they are doing it, but still, and the enthu between the women, not only 5% in the villages, people are like 50 people have come that we can do it. So I felt this is a sea changes is happening in the systems of participatory approach. I felt it. So I want to second on your thought on this. Now for Vijayan, final question for him to think on that. You handle both Mission Amrut and Smart Cities. People speak always, and from 2015 I'm hearing convergence of missions, capacities and everything. Whether in the ground it's happening, both convergence is happening in the scheme level or institution level or at the capacities level? It's a big question for you.
Yeah. So convergence, I had a bird's eye view of what is happening in both the missions, because ultimately it is a city corporation who is implementing these missions, and any mission or a scheme which is designed by the state government or the government of India, ultimately for the local body it is a single municipal commissioner or these engineers who are executing it. So interestingly, in case of Amrit and Smart City, I can give you a very specific example. For example, when we are introducing smart components as part of Smart City into a particular project, it might be water supply, it might be sewerage lines. There is a parallel project which might be happening in the context of Amrit. So I have the specific project where in the last 6 months we have been trying to upgrade the city roads of Trivandrum into smart roads, which have underground utility ducting for service delivery lines, including optical fiber networks, water connectivity, and electrical lines and all that. So immediately when the project was starting in a particular ward, we had the convergence of Amrit project also coming in. Although this was not designed together at the time of conceptualization, these projects were not in a single forum. It came together at convergence. At the execution time, it came together in such a manner that there is minimum disruption to the public at that stage and maximum benefit once the project is completed. So that is about the execution part. But if you look at from the perspective of a practitioner, in the sense of an engineer who is involved in the project, or the corporation commissioner who is involved in the project, he also learns in this process of converging projects, pooling funds into a single context where like the maximum benefit is delivered to the citizen who is residing in this particular area by bringing in multiple angles. So Smart City might be bringing in something related to an IoT related module, which might help the water supply, reducing the non-revenue water of that particular area, or it might be improving the water quality by ensuring that the sewerage lines are not leaking and it's not contaminating the water supply lines. So although these missions have different mandates, both the HR at the HR level, human resource level, as well as the during the project execution level, there's a lot of complementarity as well as convergence which happens by design. I would not say that it is by accident, but it is by design, because these missions have been conceptualized in such a manner that the modules, components which has been asked to be delivered by the cities are focused on citizens, and focused on citizens as well as the people who are the stakeholders in it, be it official level or from the private sector or from the citizen level. So I think that convergence part is happening very rapidly because of the conscious decision to make them modular and compatible with each.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the questions for this follow-up question of you only for this, it's not only the schemes I was asking that, whether it's really needed that, because all projects talks on the infrastructure delivery systems, e-governance, and every project starts like that. So I want from yourself that even the department-wise people has to know what are the other schemes are doing it, because it's interconnected, which is not at all curated in the syllabus of any type of a mission, I felt. So what is your reflection on this?
I believe that also has been taken into account when the missions were conceptualized, in the sense not just at the highest level, be it at the Apex committee or the state high power committee or the city level committee which decides on these projects. There is a convergence of all the departments who are concerned. So just because Smart City is making a project, there will be definitely an engineer from, say, water supply department. There will be an engineer from or an officer from the public transport department. There will be an engineer or an official from the IT department or the e-governance mission of the state, who is sitting together and ultimately they are the ones who is giving the green light to a project at the principal level. So the departmental coordination happens in form of committees which have been formed, and there is a lot of overlapping between these committees. So Smart Cities, the committees which are there at city level as well as the state level have a similar role to play, and they do complement what the city level committees are doing. Along with that, what the decisions which are being taken ultimately, like when a road is being built or it is being upgraded, it is not just the civil engineer who is building the road who is doing it, but the water supply engineer who is also involved. There is a sewerage component who is coming from, say, our water authority, water and sanitation authority, who is involved. So both both at execution level and decision making by design, there has been a conscious effort to make these projects converge.
So thank you that. And one of our questions, which is sudden questions to you with the other panel. This is the final question for everybody as a common. As Mr. Balasubramanian was here morning, there is the National Training Conclave which was held on June 11, 2023, because all our bureaucrats, this is connected to that question. He was telling on the National Training Conclave that, the significance of elements like service orientation of government work, ownership and realizing the aspiration of common man, the need to break down the hierarchy, and using experience of every person in an organization should be brought in the policy level. So I request this a final question to reflect from all the panelists.
See, that one can have no quarrel with this. Absolutely. It's absolutely perfect. The challenge is, how does that happen? Okay, how do you do it? I'll give you one small example from my domain experience, which we were talking about, real estate. Very small, 2-minute response to this. Now, real estate contributes so much to the economy, et cetera, and all that. Now, how can we professionalize real estate? What I tried to do in the little research that I did on this issue is to see where was the weakest link, and how can we bring in capacity building to that? Now, we looked at highly professionalized real estate markets in the USA, in Europe, and looked at our market, and I tried to identify that there are gaps in various places, but the biggest gap, the strongest link in those developed markets was our weakest link in India. Okay. And that is at the level of the realtor or the real estate agent. I mean, in India, the real estate agent is like nobody. It's the builder, the buyer, and we only think of him as a broker who's out there to sell something. 85% of our 500,000 real estate agents, 85% of them in India are part-time. They work only on weekends. Otherwise they have a job from Monday to Friday. And there is no responsibility. Now, the RERA Act brings in all kinds of responsibilities, but how can you have this overnight? How can you transform a market in which 85% of 500,000 people are just housewives and part-time workers and things like that? Unless there is a huge capacity building input into this, and you professionalize them, you have certain, and no training institutes alone can't do this. You have to have various levels of courses at scale. This has to become available, and this has to, and overnight again, you can't say you have to pass this exam and otherwise you can't function. The whole system will crumble, because the system also has to work. There has to be a transitional phase. Now, it's fascinating, it's very interesting, it's very doable. But that is how, I won't go into details of how we can do it, but the wider learning in this is that since we are looking at wider applications, that if in a particular sector, you want to look at the sector itself to push it up, then one needs to identify what is the weakest link and focus on that in a variety of ways on how to build capacity.
Thank you. It's a significant that weakest link is to be identified. It cannot be done through DNA or anything else. It should be integrated to the systems which we are talking now.
And there needs to be transitional
phases. And to Pradeep, the same question is repeated, and it's tough for you to, I think that. So you can, from your point of view, what you think about this is going to be a future policy that CBC is going to draft it. So whether it's second by the Jal Jeevan Mission?
Yeah, I think that is the question. Of course, we would have our inputs and experiences, but I would not really like to answer that question because I think let the ASNMD maybe at some other occasion.
Okay. Final reflection from your side, what really the future policy, because Jal Jeevan will again target into 2.0s and everything. It's a long-term,
Yes,
after
yes.
2024, we are looking up at a long-term intervention in terms of operation and maintenance and everything. So
Correct.
what level now ministry is thinking definitely to turn around the outcomes? What we trained already, we have trained 5,000 courses.
Correct.
So what is the lookup?
Yeah, so that is very clear to us at least. In fact, in that direction itself, we are trying to build that capacity building ecosystem with professor chairs, KRCs, and now with SPM Nivas at Apex. And the objective is to build this cadre of public health engineering and rural water supply department as a service delivery and service oriented department. We would also like, we would think that to bring some kind of professionalism, we can think of a certification or accreditation to these water suppliers ultimately, because they are water utilities that are providing water and they should be responsible for the product that they are trying to serve. So bring in more professionalism, bring in more accountability, provide them a sense of pride in doing what they are doing, not just another infrastructure or another department of rural development, and bring them on bring them into this capacity building ecosystem where they can actually benefit for the work that they are doing. So that is the vision.
Okay. So to Arun, final question for you for this panel discussion. Really, what do you think whether CB's crucial role in strengthening the city level improvement strategies, whether Kerala has anything to go out with the future agenda?
Yeah, so I would like to stick to smart cities for this question. In the sense, smart cities are a very interesting concept because Kerala is one of the leading states where decentralization was taken very seriously, and we have been one of the #1 state in all indices which rank decentralization. But when smart cities mission came in, there was some reservations on how a corporate style structure of decision making and capacities would complement what a local council is doing currently. But over the last 6 years, the journey has not been easy, but over the last 6 years, the systems have matured and we have realized that the entire mission needs to be seen as a capacity building measure altogether. More than the infrastructure which it has built and contributed to the cities and Trivandrum specifically, the legacy of having this particular institution, the experts in it, the experience they have had over the last 6 years collaborating with other cities of India, with global players who have been at the forefront of these technologies. The entire metrics or the framework which has been created would go very far in future to contribute to the capacities of the city. So it has been a cross-learning experience between the SPV which has been set up for the smart city, as well as the city council which has been there always for the last 25 years in a very effective manner. And hopefully in the next years, even after the mission is over and the funding is ended, the mission will continue, the company will continue to contribute to the positive environment which the city needs and the citizens need in the sense of the infrastructure as well as the service delivery aspects of our governance in city level.
So thank you. And before asking question to audience, so the reflection from all the three panelists is that we have a policy correct. Every government is working on the policies. Ministry is doing their best. The one thing which is, we are talking from 10 to 15 years or 20 years before by birth also, like, all departments to coordinate it and try to monitor it properly. One of a significant aspect which is always bringing it earlier, training is only like a mandatory reforms, like 5% you have to carry out 5 days in a lifetime, so you have to get the promotions and everything. Otherwise, schemes implemented, but now policies direction is also that the policy should talk that it is getting implemented, it is getting outcomes, and the same outcome should be measured in the training itself. So that could be a big boost for us like us who is being in the system. And I thank all the panelists who have joined and given their reflections and responses. Lot to ask, but due to constraint of time, I'm closing here. Now I request audience to reflect any questions to ask to the panelists. To whom you want to ask, you can ask.
Namaste. My name is Murli. I am from Namanima Cycle Foundation. We are promoting active mobility. My question is to the gentleman representing Smart City. Sir, one thing that we have observed in this Smart City development is the kind of service standards is not there on the active mobility itself, like how much is the footpath, right? So what I feel is all this capacity development, in the last 10 years, I've seen government talking cycle challenge, smart city, but there is no depth in the capacity of it. So how do we get the breadth and depth for the people, especially in small area like walking and enabling pedestrian path? So in big city in Bangalore, Bangalore is the least active mobility enabled space. Actually, everybody travels in car, and it's a cultural behavior. So there are, one is engineering, service, and standard. So second is cultural behavior. How do we kind of try to integrate it? Any plans for that? Thank you.
If I understand the question correctly, the lack of service standards, it has not been set for the cities in general, because each city is starting from a different baseline, so to speak. For example, a city like Bangalore, which is metropolis, might be at a much advanced level than a smaller city like Trivandrum or Madurai. But that has been an advantage in the sense that we have been able to learn from different cities and what they have been doing as part of Smart Cities mission. But the major constraint I would like to point out is that smart cities are not majorly, at least 90% of the cities are not greenfield cities. There, we are trying to retrofit all these technologies or try to redevelop the areas which have been identified as the lighthouse projects in the city. So, as far as active mobility goes, in the city of Trivandrum, we have been trying to take efforts to make public transport much user-friendly to people by the sense to make it more predictable, and module which we have been developing, where the public buses which are flying will have a dashboard which is available both on mobile as well as in the bus stops where the citizens go, and their end-to-end connectivity using electric cars and electric rickshaws also are being brought together, and all these are linked with GPS devices which are being tracked from the command control center. But as you correctly mentioned, it is not a standardized uniform effort which we are taking across cities, but I believe that has been a conscious decision, because each city has started its journey from a different level of preparedness as far as a particular sector like mobility goes, and that flexibility was given to the cities to experiment and figure out what works and what does not work in the infrastructure which we have currently.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anybody have a question?
Good afternoon, sir. My question is from Pradeep, sir. Sir, I am 21 batch Indian Forest Officer for Gujarat cadre only. So my question is that how far Jal Jeevan Mission has tried to utilize the already existing capacities of the people, especially their traditional wisdom, in maintaining their own water resources? Thank you, sir.
So, so it's some more question on Jal Jeevan Mission, but I will quickly answer. So when we do the planning, the input for locating the water sources is to be done in consultation with the community. That is number one. And then to ensure that the water remains available for next 30 years, the sustainability aspect of it, which will require convergence with departments like forest, agriculture, NREGA, and other funds, because agriculture and also behavior changes, so things like that. So there the role of Pani Samiti or Gram Panchayat is very much important. It has to be documented in village action plan. We have also said that this village action plan should also be part of GPDP, where the 15 Finance Commission funds are being mobilized, and where 60% of the grant is tied fund for water and sanitation. So the projects related to sustainability has to be part of that village action plan, and therefore the involvement of community is very much integrated into the whole scheme of planning in Jal Jeevan Mission. Thank you.
And there is a chapter called Legacy Wisdom, which people has to fill, like 100 years before what has happened in the watersheds, and also that's a mandatory capture in the document. So it's clearly some of a village person who is 105 years old also trying to give it. This is the rainfall data which meteorological department cannot give also. So we find that cases in our Jal Jeevan Mission newsletters. So you can go through that. So thank you, Mr. Pradeep. Any question further? Yeah, online. Quick question, so we'll close by another minute. Little bit louder. To whom?
When there are convergence of schemes, department and officers' concerns are asked to interact. But what happens when schemes or programs are introduced in the middle? So how can such changes be accommodated? Who should yield for loss of effort and funds, and how this can be avoided in the future?
Okay. It's like a tricky question in the mid of things. Either Pradeep or Arun want to answer because you are directly involved in the scheme. Question clear?
No, actually not.
Yeah, sir. Question is, when convergence schemes comes in between, when the program is already happening, so how to accommodate that?
Yes, so for Jal Jeevan Mission, let me give an example. So in Jal Jeevan Mission, the water supply infrastructure is not through convergence. That is totally funded under Jal Jeevan Mission. Of course, it is in partnership where the community, the state government and the central government, all three put their money together to build a water supply system. But the aspect to make this scheme successful is not only in the purview of this creation of water supply infrastructure. The success depends on other actors as well. What is happening in agriculture, what is happening in behavior, and what is the kind of institutional system is there. So all these aspects are also there, and therefore at Gram Panchayat level, because the Sarpanch, as per the 73rd amendment, he is responsible for water supply in the village, and similarly in urban local bodies, the people there. So they have to think in a broader way, and therefore the capacity building that Sir was talking about earlier, it will not be solved by the providing training and skilling. It has to be it has to be through a vision that they have to ensure that yes, in my village, I will manage water in an effective way. There will not be any logging of water, and if there is a wastage, I will have the system. So he will have to think from a perspective of a complete holistic perspective, and the systems are there where the things can be discussed, finalized, rules can be framed and implemented. So it has to be in that sense, and therefore the role of leadership in implementing the mission, in implementing the convergence is very important. And there the capacity building of these leaders in terms of providing them vision, in terms of empowering them from where they can get these resources, it becomes very important.
Yeah, thank you. Probably he was from the implementer's side, so he's asking the question that. So we close this panel further, and a final word of this, what I learned from these panelists: tell me and I forget, teach me I may remember, involve me I learn. So I felt the third category which we want to use it in the policy directions on the capacity building. Thank you.